Oh.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
I am Sandy Mackey,
And I'm Al Curtis.
and we are here with a conversation with Ask the Pool Guy.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks. It's been busy. We've had an awful lot going on, getting a season started. It's like starting a business over every year, and you go from kind of nothing to crazy everything, and that always adds a different level of not so much frustration anymore as like confusion and trying to get everything back in order, whether it's equipment, whether it's tools, whether it's people's roles with how they're supposed to do things and how they're supposed to handle things. And that's been kind of interesting, as well as the physical part, getting back into it, because I've been at this a long time. This is, I think, my 32nd pool season. And when I haven't done anything for a while, it's very physically draining and taxing on me. And this was the first winter now in quite a few years that we haven't been specifically building something through the winter that's really kept me physically moving, and that was due to circumstances. And we had it all lined up to do, and then timing and weather just didn't allow us to do our part, and then it got pushed back, and here we are, ready to start the spring, having not done the winter stuff what we're going to do, and it's been physically tough.
It has been. It's interesting each year, or even as we're preparing for a project, we can do a lot of the kind of behind the scenes, get ready, try to get our thoughts organized, and whatever we think we're prepared for, it always changes, like the minute we get out on the job site or when the season really starts. So we do a good amount of just getting ready for whatever develops as we go, which is great. And our team is, once again this year,
Spectacular.
dynamite. I know. Let's talk about that for a minute. We do have an uncommon construction crew with a lot of women and young women on the job. And this season, we launched the pool project with Kaylee and Jesse as like your
As the
number one and
primaries.
number two
Yeah.
construction people. How has that been going so far?
I can't even put into words how sensational that's been. Watching them, and just yesterday this happened. I am plumbing in the spa, and so I'm crouched down, and Kaylee's working on the other side of the spa, doing some block work for the front of our waterfall, and I hear her yell to Jesse to ask her a question. Jesse came over, and they sort of discussed whatever it was, and then they left. Or in the past, they would have just leaned over the wall and asked me that question, but they asked each other the question. And another case where Jessie was frustrated with something, she didn't ask for help, but Kaylee sensed it. And Kaylee went over to her, and they solved the problem, and she came back to do what she was doing. So just those two instances of each one of them sort of knowing where the other one was and knowing what needed to be done and knowing what the objective was, they kind of had each other's back, or they were asking or indicating that they each needed help. And that was refreshing. That was definitely something that I wanted, and they're at that point now where they don't have to turn to me to get that question answered every time. They can turn to each other, which that was a really powerful thing, because then they can lead other people. Jesse was over there working with someone. Kaylee was over here working with someone. They got together on whatever the solutions were and then went back to their respective teams to work.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very cool.
That is awesome. It's interesting following the development of a team and team dynamics, because each person has their strengths, and we do a lot in our team meetings recognizing what people's strong suits are, figuring out their personalities, what they're drawn to, how they communicate, and seeing that mature, I think, in these girls in this team, them able to step into more of that decision-making role. And you said they're working autonomously, they're making their own decisions, it's pretty seamless, and they have enough knowledge and confidence that they're able to do that. That is amazing.
They each know the pieces now. They each know the parts. And each project is very different, but also very similar in how we go about it. Like this pool project is drastically different than pool projects in the past, in that we're building the entire pool without one end of the pool on, without having dug the deep end of the pool because of water issues. And it's just added a whole different sense of how we get through the steps of things, and they've seamlessly, it's like, we just do this all the time, it's no big deal. And imagining anyone else building a pool that way would, it would be disconcerting why one end of the pool was still open. Now, we've done that when we've shot walls before, and I guess in some respects we did that last year with the one project where we left a wall open, but in this case we're leaving a whole section of the pool open. There's a whole sun shelf and steps and things going in there, so it's a little bit different than anything we've done before, and they just seamlessly sort of, this is how we do it. No worry or stress or question, just knowing that, well, this is how we'll do it. We'll get it figured out. So those types of things happen continually now, as I've noticed over the last few weeks, and it's been really cool.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We also have had the chance, and we're going to be in the spring opening season revisiting some of our legendary escapes that after we build, our goal is that you don't have to see us very often. And sometimes that goes super well, and we really aren't called out for that many things. And then in other cases, maybe the pool or the homeowner needs a little more hand-holding, which we're able to do. But this season, we have a few of our pools that are kind of maturing into, they're not a year or two old. They're getting on 5 and 6, and they need just a little bit more of that legendary love, which is an opportunity for homeowners that miss us to have us back in their yards for a bit. It's also an opportunity to work with the pools as they begin to age and patina on their own, yet we want to freshen up certain areas. Mm-hmm. So what are some of your thoughts on that?
I think there's a whole nother layer that I'm noticing more now than ever, and there's been questions in the past, but there's a whole nother level of interest of wanting phase 2. That's come up quite a few times. I think about it last year when it came up, and now it's already come up a couple times this year of what could phase 2 look like. Would you be willing to? Would you be willing to come back and then do this thing? And I think that's something we're going to see more of in the coming years, that we're going to go back and then not only the touch-up, because granted, if you can give a little bit of love all the way through, it's far better than waiting and trying to give a love 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years later, because there's so many cool little working parts and stuff, and as long as you do a little touch to them all the time, they stay fresh and beautiful. But if you leave them neglected, like anything, leave a car sitting in the yard for 5 years not running, and you can only imagine what's going to go on underneath. And that's the same thing. And we're not talking just mechanical things, because mechanical things are running and using them. We know all of that. But it's all the aesthetics and those things that, like you said, aging and patinaing is good, but sometimes that's not the best. That's not really what we're looking for. So being able to refresh things, and we're dealing with concrete. And concrete, as much as most people think, oh, it's sand and cement and some stone and some water, you mix it all together and it just turns this hard stuff that you can't break. And yet it's 1,000 times more interesting than that if you pay attention. There's chemistry happening continually for years, and you get efflorescence. It's releasing things out of it, so you're getting fogging and coating over it. It doesn't matter when your driveway's white. You would never notice it if those things happen. But when you're taking concrete and you're making it into colors and you're making it look like something, if you're really trying to get it to have that specific look, then that leaching process and some of those chemical release process, they don't help. That's the type of stuff that is good, just a touch here and a touch there and a touch there over the course of its lifetime, and it's spectacular. But leave it for 5 years and let those things happen, and while it can be okay, it is much better to not let that happen, unless you want that look. I mean, sure, things can fog up and they can weather way down, but when you like that really rich color and you like that variety, you lose that when everything starts fogging up a little bit white. You lose that drastic, that dynamic difference in color. And that's a lot of stuff that we see. We go back and do some touch-ups, and And it just keeps it sensational, keeps it interesting.
So, as far as phase two, it's coming up more, and customers are sad when we're done in their yard. So, how will we move into the future? Because I see a huge benefit to doing phase two with people. They get us back in their yard, we get to have more of that relationship, we get to set up more of the environment around our legendary escape. How do you see moving forward balancing the new build and the excitement of trying something we've never done before with going back and doing some phase two for people?
As much as it's important to do, and I think it really is, and I'm going to use an example in a second, it's difficult for me to think about restaging into an existing place that's already been finished and then having to tear up. Because while under construction, it's much easier when there's big things that need to be done to move materials with trucks and equipment and all of that. But on a phase two, you already have this existing awesomeness that now you're trying to enhance. And to enhance that awesomeness, you still have to tear something up. So it's not nearly as easy getting equipment in. It's not nearly as easy, a lot of that stuff, and then you're trying to match things. So while we've done it,
that's an argument for doing
trying to do it all at once.
The bulk of the hardscape during phase one, because coming back to do phase two will be more challenging.
It's a time and money thing.
Yeah.
It's going to take longer to do because it's by hand, and it's by virtue of it being more money because now you're working around existing structures. And I'll use the example a few years ago how in the original proposal I had proposed a shade structure over the bar at the end of a project. And the homeowner decided, nah, we don't need that, and nah, we really don't. And I knew they needed it. I mean, having been around it so long, understanding there's no shade, there's no anything. And 2 years later, going back in and having to cut out those spaces and dig footings, and it was all by hand, so it was all handwork. And we have concrete pumps, so it's not like moving materials, but you can't hardly run a concrete pump when you're just trying to pour footings for pillars, 2 pillars in the middle of a patio. That's all handwork. And so in that particular case, it turned out sensationally, although you're literally building over the pool when you're trying to put the roof on this cool structure and put the thatched roofing on, and all of that's happening while you're kind of dangling over the pool, which means what's falling in the pool, so all those things, they just add up. And unfortunately, it takes time. It'd be nice if you could just do that stuff quickly, but when there's all those things you're dealing with, it just takes that much longer. Had we done that project, that part of that project at the day of the build, at the time we were building, it would have been nothing, because those posts would have been set while we were shooting and doing that, and then at any given point while we had scaffolding up, we could have just whipped that roof on and put that, and it would have been done like that. Instead, it was all of these steps in this process of going back and cutting concrete out and breaking it out and moving it, removing it, and then setting those posts. Now there's time. We have to wait for those footings to set up. Well, back in the day, we would have put those posts in while we were doing other things. A week would have gone by and the concrete would have set up because we were busy working over here. Then you go right back to it. But now we do that and then we don't show up for 2 weeks. Well, that looks like nothing's getting done, but the reality is there's time that it takes. And when we do it all at once, like this project we're working on now, there's a million moving parts going on at one time, because we even set fence posts this past week. I mean, we literally started the pool, and now there's already 4 or 5 fence posts in, because they went into the patio. In the process, we pre-poured a patio here and did this and did that. And that's where it gets a lot easier. But when you're trying to do phase 2 into an existing, there's more meticulous steps, which means there's more time, more back and forth, and there's just more to it. And I love it because I love the net result of it, and it's kind of challenging and fun, but it's absolutely more cost effective to do it on the new build. And people don't know what they don't know. So that's the thing, though.
Where is your line? Where do you draw the line if there's a shade structure that you propose or some other element of the initial design that for whatever reason a homeowner says, I don't think so, we're not going to do that? Where is your line of allowing it not to happen with the pool?
So here's my challenge with it, and it was where I was going to go a minute ago with a story that I wanted to use. We build in a style that's drastically different than anyone, at least here. Like, not just in landscaping or not just in pools, but not in home building, not in interior design and decorating. We're just very different. There's a complete and very different feel about everything that we've built, whether it's been inside wine cellars or outside kitchens or any of those things. And then we build these cool environments. And I'm gonna cite an example where we did not do phase two. Someone else did. And we built this really great pool, amazing, cool environment, and then they hired someone else to add the kitchen. This happened a couple times, as a matter of fact, but I'm thinking of two projects in particular, but I was thinking of one. And while the idea was based around what I had suggested a kitchen could be, they hired someone else who works in a very different style using kind of similar materials, and it's nothing even close. And there's this stark difference between this, what I would call a very sterile and uninspired, uninteresting, uncomfortable space, but looks pretty, sitting next to this really yummy, inviting, fun, exciting, eye-enriching, emotional thing going on over here, and they should match. Because if they matched this space over here, which I'm sure they spent tons and tons of money on, it could be 1,000 times better. And it's not. It's just a thing. It's just a, well, looks like an afterthought to me. Now, maybe the average person walking out there go, oh, this is beautiful. But if anyone even paid enough attention or breathed a little bit and really thought, well, how does this make me feel? That makes you feel yummy, and this makes you go, ugh.
Reminds me of a pool that we toured at a very elaborate house in Texas, where they had the entertaining spaces and all the doors flowed out to this pool area. And the pool was nice. It had some things that, of course, we would change. And then it had the outdoor kitchen bar areas. And one of them I remember walking through, and it was so uncomfortable. I couldn't get out of there.
That whole space was, other than one area.
It was so awkward. So that was what your story is reminding me
That's an
of.
example like that particular. We had nothing to do with that project other than touring it. Here's many hundreds of thousands of dollars, $500,000 maybe in this backyard, maybe not quite that, but a lot of money, and there was nothing comfortable about it. And here we're with a whole group of entrepreneurs, and we're pool people, and everyone is asking us, so what do you think of the pool? Oh, it's beautiful. I mean, I couldn't get emotional, because if I started getting emotional about it, I would have said what I really thought. And not that it was bad, it wasn't. It was average at best. For $500,000 was average. Average of what it could have been. I mean, that same space could have been spectacular for that same amount of money, or half that amount of money, and it was just average at best.
Some people don't know what they don't know, and
Right.
they don't know how to feel the space. And I do remember we invited a couple people to walk around the space with us, and they felt it the way that we felt it, and they understood where there was the disconnect in the space. But most people probably going there,
Oh, wow.
beautiful pool, expansive house, all of this, you know, they were probably just in awe of the whole experience, which very, very right to be in awe of that. And then going to the next level would be immersing yourself and feeling how all the spaces feel, not just giving it credit for being expensive or beautiful, but really kind of feeling and experiencing it.
Recognize that most people, especially in our culture, in the United States, and it's kind of a blanket statement, but I think in general, our society and our capitalistic ways, which I'm all about capitalism. I'm not saying anything against that, but in our way, it's all about stuff and more stuff and new stuff and bigger stuff, like that bigger house or bigger, nicer car, or, you know, either car will get you from point A to point B, but this one's X more dollars than this one, so all of a sudden that person creates more value, that has more value. And so you can't blame even though the crowd we were with was far above average as people, amazing, but still very average in that particular thinking, is that, wow, we're impressed by the side of the home. Beautiful home, no doubt about it, looking at the home. But when you step beyond that, I see the anxiousness in you.
I have a whole
I know you do.
bunch of thoughts about
when,
that.
when you step beyond that and you go, well, how does this make me feel? When I close my eyes and I feel the color, when I close my ears and I feel the sound, not how I hear it or how I see it, because those are different perceptions. But if you just immerse yourself into the space, what's the difference? And I can tell you, it's night and day. There's no comparison. And I have 100 things to say as well. I'm going to stop so you can talk, and then I'll go again.
So as you're saying that, I'm thinking you're saying, so we do this in the pool world, which we do, and we do it really well. Our winter project that winter just kept happening on was us immersing ourselves in a home where we could do the same thing, which is making me think about one of our upcoming projects where we've designed the pool and the homeowners are so excited about the pool. It's all they can talk about. And they're building an amazing house. And as you're talking about this exceptional group of people that we were with who are still perceiving things on that, is it big, is it expensive, is it beautiful level, there's potential for everybody to live in a yummier space when it comes to their home environment as well. So this customer that we're building this pool for wouldn't only have to be excited about their pool, they could also be excited about their home if they knew that they had permission, the way that we give people permission to be expressive in their pools, they could be equally expressive in their home and begin to be as excited about that, because it does not have to conform. There's certain building codes and requirements. I understand those need to conform. But the way it makes you feel and the way that you experience the space, it doesn't have to be that they're in their home and then they get to relax in their pool. It could all be an experience if that's the mindset that goes into designing all the spaces. And I think with people hiring a builder, they might feel that they're boxed into those builder guidelines. And I would say that a future phase of Legendary Escapes is going to naturally be a space for a home and a pool and a backyard or whatever that may be, that all gives the immersive experience versus just going into the backyard to have that.
I think we found that out when we built the wine cellar. This home was being renovated. It's a massively beautiful home. And they spent, I don't even know the kind of money that was put into trying to bring this house to what they wanted.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking many, many, many thousands of square feet of home on many different levels. And the homeowner admittedly at one point said that her favorite place in the house was the 150 square feet that we got to work in.
Yeah.
If that may not, it was probably 160 square feet of the wine cellar, because it is drastically different. It's drastically different. And it goes less to our skill set and more to our mindset and our feel set.
And the style.
You know, because we're going for a feel and an emotion, and we let that guide us, not what material should we use, what color should we use,
or what
would someone else expect
as valuable.
And I would bet today, if we went back to that home, we would have that exact same feeling that you and I are feeling right now, thinking about being in that space. The space was insanely incredible.
I'm also thinking about our last party that we threw here at our company headquarters, which is, we had a pool appointment at our company headquarters last night, and they were having trouble explaining to their kids, which they brought along for the appointment, where it was. So they ended up saying the party house or something like that, because it's so fun and it's not easily pigeonholed into a pool headquarters, yet that's what it is. And at the last party, there was a grown man, I don't know, late 40s, early 50s, who walked through and said that this was the most amazing house, his favorite house that he's ever been in. And is our skill in having put our touches on this space exceptional? I would argue that people would argue that it's not, but it's the mindset and the feel and the immersion and the permission to be surprised and delighted in something that's as normal as a home that makes it amazing. People need to know they have permission. You have permission to do anything with your spaces that you want to.
Well, I think there's all this social pressure around us in a home, resale value. Oh, you know, the realtor saying paint the walls white and do whatever. And
Great advice.
Great advice, yeah.
Yeah.
When you immerse yourself in something so that you can feel a certain way, there will always be someone willing to buy that space if you've taken the time. Now, if you just want to paint everything white and just be all sterile and boring, sure, someone will buy it because they'll see potential in it. But if you create an immersion, somebody's going to want that experience.
Well,
Someone's going to want to feel that way.
We've sold houses that way.
Every time.
We did a renovation, and specifically, we had buyers come through. They wrote an offer. They ultimately ended up buying it, and their agent said to me that they wanted this home because it was so unique, and the character that it had from the wall that was painted a really fun and amazing color, but with like the dents and scratches, like they wanted that versus it just is fresh out of a builder's spec book with all of the ordinary valuable things. They wanted the character and something different.
Well, it reminds me of a customer that wanted a like an Irish pub, and I know that if I were building that Irish pub, it would have been drastically different.
Dented and weathered and yummy.
He would have seen me take all of this fresh wood and give it the patina that's why it feels the way it does. It takes time and wear and weather to create things that way. Those are not bought out of the box. And so when you buy out of the box, the only thing you can do is make it as perfect as you can because that's what you're judged on.
There was an Irish pub restaurant in Brighton that we attempted to go to a few times. I even tried to host a party there. I hosted a party there. And it lacked a little something, which
it lacked
comes
a
from
lot
the
of
mindset.
something. Yes.
But thinking to the decor that they had, they tried to do that. It had no age. It had no weathering. It felt hollow and empty, kind of, compared to...
There was no compelling reason.
Going through, I've been to Ireland, luckily. It was amazing. And going into, like, a tight space with the weathered, and there was Mary's Bar, Mary's Pub, amazing, like hole in the wall, and it's been the same forever, yet it felt immersive and yummy and amazing versus
that was, if you remember, that was open spaces because they converted a building, which you always do, and that's fine. But I would make an argument from a restaurant standpoint that even if we had that experience and it was not at all the immersion thing, but they had tremendous food, we might go back.
Or personality in the people.
Maybe, right, or personality, but I'm just thinking the space alone. If the space was just and the food was great, you might go back. But I believe, just in terms of what I've witnessed, if the space is amazing, even if the food is subpar, you'll go back every time because it's how you feel. You'll accept okay, this was a little overcooked or that was a little whatever. I mean, the greatest combination would be great space and great food in combination. But I think most restaurants miss out on environment versus food. Although food is important and that's a good thing. I think environment and that immersion is more important.
Food in a restaurant is less important than how
environment.
You feel when you're eating the food or experiencing the food.
I agree. So that makes me think of another pool project. This would have been earlier on in me really living this way. Like I've always tried to build new things. You've known me for a long time, and I've always wanting to try the next thing, and that was always good because that kind of was a stepping stone. But when I really started feeling how I was going to do something, and I know it sounds fruity and weird, and that's why I'm the fruity pool guy sometimes. But when you kind of immerse yourself in it, I remember one of the earliest projects where I did that, where I was really only responsible for the pool and the waterfall and the slide and there was like a raised wall and a sun shelf and that. Someone else, he had someone that was going to do the patio, and then he had his landscapers were going to do like a kitchen under the raised patio. And I was working my way through it, and I know how to build a pool, but it was more than building the pool was how am I going to make someone feel by building the pool? Not how they think they're going to feel, but how I know I can make them feel a certain way and how they can enjoy it. And so we built a pool, someone else did the patio, and then their landscapers did this kitchen, which I imagine was really expensive. Just knowing how much people spend on stuff like that, it was way more expensive even than I would have charged for it. And it's a complete dud. Comparison, that space to this space, not even close. So that's another example of that but that was early on. I didn't know any better. I didn't really know how important it was for me to have, said, no, I need to do this to make this right. And I see that project today, and that's still that's the sore spot. Is it still not?
I know which one you're talking about, and I can put myself standing next to the pool and feel a certain way, and I can put myself in that kitchen and it feels completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So that, if you've heard us talk about energy signatures, people have energy signatures, places have energy signatures.
And your work has an energy signature, and the net result of your work years later, you have that same disconnect.
So then you have an opportunity, because there is somebody who really would like to be our customer that is looking for that full backyard experience where they can have the entertaining space coupled with the pool and some other cool features. And wouldn't it be amazing to build
the entirety of
something that just feels so amazing and immersive in like 360 in all of those spaces?
Where I'm challenged in that is I'm really good at coming up with ideas and kind of winging it. And that's the next phase for me, is getting better at not winging everything. And while winging it, you still got to be within code. You still have all those things that you have to build properly. And so winging it, I don't mean that I'm not building it properly. It just means that the way it comes together is a little more organic way. Right.
That doesn't have specs and blueprints that you're following.
But the next step for me is to have a little bit more of that. Because certain environments like that one you're talking about, we have some structural things that kind of go beyond my expertise, but I don't want to give up the control of building it.
Well, you have to bring
because
your approved people in who can take the flavor.
Well, I have to find the approved people to be able to bring them in. That's the other part of that equation, why sometimes I would try to separate myself from that.
Right.
Because, just like the house, building the inside of a house is no different if you break away from that expected what it's supposed to be inside.
Expected ordinary. Yeah. There's a whole scope in home.